Thank you for joining in as my guest. We're working towards International Jazz Day on April 30th, and today I have Isaiah B Brunt as my guest today. And I'm going to play a little bit of music, but before I bring him on, um, he has been a top production person and studio owner for a number of years in Australia. Very popular, writes, sings and plays guitar, side lap, steel, piano, and ukulele. So his early influence came from hearing his father play the ukulele, blues harp, lap steel, but he'll talk about that. But as being a studio owner, he's worked with Julio Iglesias and his orchestra, the Go-Go Dolls, rehearsed with Randy Jackson and his band for the Australian touring. Not only has Isaiah been behind the board for globally upper echelon bands. He's been a go-to sideman for bands touring down under, like the time he hit the road in Sydney, aiding Keanu Reeves' band Dogstar. All the while, he was working with synthetic and packaged music, and it's a real pleasure to have Isaiah as my guest today. And I wanted to play just a little bit, just as an intro, just before he comes on. So here we go.
When the winter cold has come, along with the stormy clouds, there's a ray of sun that shines and tells the seasons round. It's like a sweet surprise, a treasure in disguise. You know you're beautiful and really wonderful. Don't let your love run down. Give back the love you found. Share all this love. It's okay, it's alright. Mary said everything is gonna be good tonight. It's alright, okay. Everything is gonna be great today. She makes an instant impression every time she's appearing on the magnificent silver screen. She's a female goddess with a timely smile and a charm that will influence kings. It's okay, it's alright. Everything is gonna be good tonight. It's alright, it's okay. Marilyn says everything is gonna be great today. Take to the bridge. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's just a little bit of a sample there. And just before I bring him on, I just wanted to say Isaiah's most traveled blues man. And in 2010, he was nominated as Sydney's Blues Society Performer of the Year and traveled and played all over like New Orleans to record and has been most sought after. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you put your hands together for my wonderful guest? Isaiah B Brunt, and I'll press a button and he'll appear once I get him on. There he is. Hi.
Hey Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for taking your time.
Oh
We've had
well.
some talks, and this is part of an eclectic collection of my favorite blues performers. You've been behind the desk. You've been the writer. You've been the collaborator. You've been the performer, and you've travelled infinitely with your music throughout the world. And what experiences in life makes a good blues man and a songwriter, do you think?
Well, I can only answer for myself. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
my experience of working with what I know and the sort of material that I work with is that it changes all the time. You know, so you could be writing something one day and then another story pops up from the past, or you might be influenced by um, events that are happening around you, or it could be romance. Who knows? And I
Yeah.
think with writers, sometimes romance is not really writing about the person or the people that seem like it's obvious. It's kind of a fictional romance, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
a general type of idea. Yeah. So
Yeah.
someone put it into perspective the other day. They were talking about writing books and writing stories, and then with the song, you have this little window of time to condense that story into a couple of verses and maybe a chorus if you're lucky, or just 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes.
Mm. And you released an album called back in 2016, "A Moment in Time." And in that album, what do you think characterize the memories in the studio session that you'd like to share with us in the creation of that album? You know.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I think I had way too much time with that album. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
the other albums that did really, the albums I find that people do well with are the ones where you don't have much time. You got to get it together. There's like
Mm,
limits, and that one I think I had way too much time. So but it was fun,
yeah.
and that kind of came through. I met a lot of people you work with, and that's really part of the fun of this business too, or
Yeah.
this art, is meeting people, working with other people who can bring some different colors and shade to the
Yeah.
canvas,
Yeah.
and
Was
they
that
make,
that
they
was that
make
a
you better as well.
was that a different experience recording of Keanu Reeves' band? That experience.
Oh, that's totally different. Yeah, that he was filming. He came to Sydney to film the Matrix movies.
Right. Okay.
So, and I was driving them around in their little Tarago at the time as well. The main actors. So I
Enjoy.
got to know them a little bit, and they were fond of me, because
Yeah.
he's a very humble guy, Keanu. As you know, he's part Hawaiian, part Lebanese.
No, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, he's mixed. But I mean, as a genuine guy, he was fan, fabulously humble. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the other guys in the band were his alter ego. So it was interesting. And
Yeah.
he was the bass. He's the bass player. He plays bass. He
Oh.
loves to play bass on. Part of making a movie is they have the downtime for the actors. So
Yeah. Yep.
he would book out the whole tour room, which at one time caused a bit of a not a conflict, but it was a bit of a um,
I had Midnight Oil, who were in there as well, booked for the same time, but he
Wow.
block booked it for months, you know.
Wow.
And they would normally come in and do a tour before a tour, and so I had to put them in the back, which is still a big area, but most of the big bands are really happy with the big room that looked out at the Powerhouse Museum and the roof and kind of down towards Chinatown. And so I had to introduce them all, and there was a little bit of tension until I met they met each other. But it was the same thing. He's a very humble guy. They kind of realised that, I explained it, but the business when you're dealing with artists, mate.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
and
I've been on both sides. I can. There's lots of stories, but
yeah, and from your musical point of view, what are the differences between Aussie and American blues scene?
oh,
Is
huge difference.
Yep.
Huge difference. Yeah, it's like Aussie jazz and New Orleans jazz.
Oh
The
yeah.
guys on the street playing brass instruments in New Orleans would be the top guys here in the studio. I'm not joking, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're just busking. They're getting ready. So the way they have their art is because I was introduced to the families that run that business in New Orleans.
Wow.
The George Buck, who ran the label there, used to bring over European jazz musicians back in the 50s and 60s and record them, fly them back, put the albums out. They'd tour for months and months.
Wow.
His wife, when I was there, was still running the label. They own blocks of the place in New Orleans. Yeah, there's a radio station. I was recording while I was recording. They asked me to come over to do a live radio station interview overlooking the Mississippi. It's a dream for a musician. You know what I mean?
Wow. Wow.
And so when I went up the stairs the first time and saw the labels on the wall of this studio that I was recording at, it's history. Some of the first tape recordings of jazz music was recorded here, and there's like pictures of these dudes with the old reel to reels, and so I got to meet those people. The engineers were really friendly, and the second time I went back to do a moment in time, I wanted to do some photos in a jazz cafe, and at first the engineer said, "Oh, look, let me ring blah blah blah." The label guy said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure." He rang the owner, George Buck's wife, his widow, and she said, "Oh, yeah, would like to meet them if they're coming from overseas." So they pulled all these photographs off the wall just so I could get that shot where there's that round thing for the album that says "A Moment in Time," and that is like a little green screen on there. And so on that album, there's a guy playing. There's a few people on that album which are mad jazz players and musicians from New Orleans. There's um, some New Orleans royalty. If you look at that album and the names on there, you can link them with the place. But anyway, back to meeting George Buck's widow. You know, she ran the place like the old school. So we were sitting there, and they wanted to feed us, and we're like the photographer and a couple of the models that were there. And so they shut the place early so we could come down after the studio and take photographs. Get all dressed up, and she wanted to talk and meet and all that sort of stuff. Now we had to go through the kitchen to get something, right? We
Hmm.
went through the kitchen. This is a story just for you guys. And there was just this pile of money on one of the tables where she had been collecting all the rents around the block
Wow.
of all the shops, still doing it old style.
Wow.
And this black American guy comes out, and I said, "Wow." He goes, "Yeah, I'm security, and I'm just a chef."
Wow.
So there was they own the blue. They lease out the place where the BB King Cafe is. There's all these famous places on there, but they own the label, they own the radio station across the road, and yeah, it was like being introduced to New Orleans royalty, and it was fabulous. Yeah, I was still in touch with the guys over there. They always were sending me best wishes and stuff like that. So
Yeah. How did you come across to combine didgeridoo and blues? What's the story behind that one? And
I've
who
got.
did you play with? Who were they? By the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got a couple of friends there that are didgeridoo and artists in their own right. And
Mm.
the first one was a guy called, is a guy, a good friend of mine, Sean Chilborough. And Sean does the comedy festival with the All Stars. He's been to the
Oh,
Edinburgh Festival. He's done Melbourne Festival. He's down in Melbourne doing that festival of comedy now. So um,
no, I just
I
might
was
just
listening to
I'll just
the
I'll just play a
music.
little bit. I'll just play a little bit just while
Oh,
we.
okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Where is your man? 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 Where is your man?
Yeah. Just a little bit for everybody. So that relationship with your blues and the didgeridoo. Yeah.
Yeah, Sean's good. He's a good didgeridoo. He's a great didgeridoo player. A good friend. And I did the Melbourne Blues Festival, and another friend, William Barton, was rang me and said, "Oh, I'm coming to Melbourne on this day. What are you doing?" Because he knew I was going to Melbourne, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing that festival down at the tent um, at their showground area, or whatever what it's called, just on the side of Melbourne there." And he said, "Oh," I said as a joke, I said, "Well, you want to come down and play? You can put your fee on the IOU again, because William travels and does all these orchestras around the world. So when he plays with me, it's a friend gig, if you know what I mean. It's a friendship gig." And so he came down, and I had announced it at a jazz place in the middle of Melbourne one night. So all these people from the night before, including a Scottish guy who played violin who was traveling around doing a festival, they all came down. Now, William didn't arrive till like about the second or third song, because they'd flown in and then he arrived. But when he got up to play, he has got some magic going on with his stuff. He didn't even know the material. That's the thing about Sean and William. They don't need to know what you're playing. They chime in.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
played his dude. He did the breathing and playing with the sticks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an experience. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So right now, I was hoping to convey to our audience the width and breadth of the music background that you've had, and not only in performance but engineering and recording of some great Australian bands. And I sort of asked you earlier the difference between the Australian blues experience and the American blues experience. Has that moved a bit? You think now that time has passed in terms of how you see the Australian blues scene and where we're at? Are more people coming on board, or how do you see it? You know?
Well, um, there's a massive difference to the old school blues there. So if you're traveling around the states, you'll see they live it. They live it. They
Wow.
live the lifestyle. They live the whole scene. They're in the scene.
Yeah.
So we've got to kind of we're here. We're like we've got to put on the outfits. We've got to kind of get get the mindset to do the gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas when you're traveling around there and you're doing your gigs, you're kind of in your performance mode all the time.
All right.
Until
Right.
you're at a hotel but you're in because they were in it. They're in that lifestyle. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. One
Um,
I want to share with you a friend of mine. He went around Chicago to a lot of the blues bars because he wanted to film, different blues bars, and in the blues bars, where the band's on stage, and this is just my observation, you know, but um, every stage personality in the band, there was just heaps of banter, you know, and occasionally an expression was made, the banter was made, and the audience will be lifting their beer in response to the banter, and then the way they go, they'll
mm,
play. And then another thing was that when they talked about the banter, um, they'd talk about something, and then suddenly they burst into a blues song. My wife left me when she left me hard. Like it's real sort of life.
it's
I
personal.
feel every bar that he sent me, and why do I say that? Because but that's just mine. It's just that the blues performance I see here is just chung 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 just sing, play the song, play the song, next song, play the song, and they may just refer, oh, he's a Muddy Waters number, da 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 da. You know what I mean? And look, I don't mean to be cruel, but that's my observation, and there's probably not as much banter as I saw, um,
Mm.
with the audience. So yeah, but they love it. I suppose they're talking about it.
It's very personal, you know. So it's not like music in the way that we think music. It's it's a lifestyle of like that where that comes from. So if you're into blues, you're into that. You understand there's a background to it. If you're into jazz over there, then you're kind of it's the same sort of thing. You're predisposed to being in touch with what that means, and it's kind of we like I said here we don't have the same culture musically. We
Yeah,
we can we can um, we can showcase what we have. We can like you can play people can play all that sort of stuff, but it seems that over there, if you're doing original music, that's the expression they're interested in. So even if they didn't know what they don't even know who I am and my stuff, but what they know when you get in radio interviews is you're playing your own music, and that's what they want to know. What is that music? You
mm.
know. So if I did a version of someone else's song, they're not really interested in knowing because they've already got a Muddy Waters. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're not really interested in your Muddy Waters version. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
they're interested in your version of your music
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's why their music is so that's why the standards of music in their society of kind of like they're the echelon that we kind of follow if you
yeah,
know what that
yeah.
means.
I really enjoyed this short interview in preparation to our International Jazz Day, and I just wanted to ask if you could come back because I think there's some great subjects that our audience could benefit from your experience, and we touched a little bit on some of those subjects, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and I probably, if that's all right, if I could just in on one of your songs, the Great Ocean Quake. I've got really geared up there. So, could you talk a little bit about that song? Is that okay before I play it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for, and by the way, thanks for having me on, Fraser. I
No,
appreciate it,
no
and
problem.
I love what you're doing. It's great to have people who are
Well,
promoting artists
thank you,
and all
mate.
that.
You've done
So
the work, man. You're a bit of Australia royalty with Midnight
yeah,
Oil and all the other
well, I don't
bands
know
in the
about that, but
background. But thank you. Yeah.
well, Great Ocean's Quake is about the tsunami that hit the islands in Samoa. So we all got the news about it, and we saw some of the news broadcasts that were happening at the time. And yeah, and you speak to your family on the phone, make sure they're okay, and relatives, and
Hmm.
so yeah, it was a pretty moving connection there. So that song is actually about the tsunami. Yeah,
All
it's
right.
about the tsunami.
Well, let me get that going, and thank you very, very much. Thank
Thank you,
you. Thank
thank
you
you.
for your time, and we'll have you back. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, let us fall, Lord, into the tide. The mighty waters have come alive, and all of the people have been swearing.